Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, Hugh Freeze, the Auburn Tigers heading into 2025. We've kind of talked about it all off season long. The most fascinating program across the country going into 2025, where look, the national media not talking a ton about this football team. And look, rightfully so. They haven't really shown us over the last couple of years that they're going to go out and compete for an SEC championship. Then you dive into the roster that Hugh Freeze has built over the last couple of years, and you're saying, look, if this thing comes together, it's not only one of the more dangerous teams that you see in the SEC. This is a team that I think can compete at the highest level of college football going into 2025, and that ushers in the conversation of, look, Hugh Freeze got to put it together in 2025. We have loved the offseason approach from Hugh Freeze over the last couple of years. I think everything off the field, Hugh Freeze has done a really good job of. And then on the football field, you just don't see it come together. And I think for many Auburn fans, you're looking at year three and saying, look, I get that you took over from a Brian Harsin coach program that was in the dumps. Like that talent was absolutely miserable when Brian Harsin left Auburn. And we were willing to give Hugh Freeze, 1 or 2 years to get the roster right going into 2025. Look, if Hugh Freeze is going to make it work at Auburn, he's got to make it work with this roster he has going into 2025. Want to take a step back and kind of have two different conversations. One, let's evaluate what we've seen Hugh Freeze do so far. And then I think the second conversation is, all right, what are the expectations for this football team going into 2025? Fired up to get into it. Now, what I'm most excited to hear from the Auburn fans in the comment section is what is our feeling regarding Hugh Freeze going into year three? Like, if it's another 5-7 win season, are we talking about Hugh Freeze not having a job going into 2026? And then secondly, like for the Auburn fans, what are your expectations for this football team in 2025? What do you need to see from Hugh Freeze that tells you he's the coach to make it work at Auburn? Let it fly in the comment section. Appreciate y'all rocking with it. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, without further ado, let's just start with your evaluation of what Hugh Freeze has done up until this point within this Auburn program.
And I think the recruiting obviously speaks for itself. I mean, he's putting this team in the top 10, top 7 pretty much every year.
Yep.
It feels like since he's been there, and you feel like that is probably going to continue. I do think people sleep a little bit on the on-field development of certain players. And you look, I mean, they're losing some games and they're not playing good enough in like big moments like turnovers. They're really bad with penalties, kind of bad with. So they're doing a lot of losing football. But you look at who's playing really well for this Auburn team, the guys who Hugh Freeze has recruited. I think of a Caleb Harris. I think of Malik Blockton, Keldrick Falk. Like those guys, Cam Coleman, those guys are the leaders of this team. They're the best players on this team. And you look at his hit rate with the guys he's recruiting, I am very, very encouraged by what that can be. They're just really young for the past year. Like they're just
to me, when you evaluate what Hugh Freeze has done, it's like everything I think's been really good. Besides one, hitting on the quarterback position, and two, like kind of goes hand in hand. You don't hit on the quarterback position, you probably lose some games you probably shouldn't. And that's kind of the negative part. Now, here's the thing. It's what you get evaluated on. You can win the offseason all you want, but if you don't win Saturdays in the fall, it don't really matter. That's why I look at 2025 and say, this is the year. Because my take on what Hugh Freeze has done is, I feel like there's this media narrative around Auburn that they're super reliant on the transfer portal. And Hugh Freeze has made some really strong additions in the portal over the last couple of years. Dill, last two classes have been comfortably in the top 10 at the high school ranks. They use the transfer portal very effectively to supplement what they do at the high school ranks. And they don't lose a ton of players they don't want to lose. There's not a lot of attrition on this roster. I look at a guy like Perry Thompson, like I wouldn't fault that kid transferring out of Auburn and trying to get some more playing time in 2025. Hugh Freeze doesn't lose those guys they don't want to lose. Everything I feel like is really kind of humming for Auburn off the football field. Now you got to put it together in 2025.
Even the on-the-field plays, like down to down, it's not terrible. It's just they're making these crucial mistakes. Pretty much it feels like game in and game out. Like they're turning the ball over a ton and like just some really bad situational football. But I look like the players are good. I think like you
Yeah.
have a lot of players who are playing really good football. Again, when you miss at the quarterback spot like they have, that's going to hamper you in a big way. And it clearly has. So Jackson Arnold, he's going to be a huge part of this like Hugh Freeze process. And I know you've got some young guys coming up. But Jackson Arnold needs to play well this year for sure.
What needs to happen in 2025? Like the obvious answer is win football games, but there's a couple of other conversations that need to take place too. You got to hit on I don't think it's an option for Hugh Freeze. Like if Hugh Freeze misses on Jackson Arnold and this team goes, 6-6 or 5-7, you're either going to be out of a job or the hot seat conversation is going to be awfully loud going into 2026. So it's number one, you have to hit on your quarterback in 2025, whether that's Deuce Knight, whether that's Jackson Arnold. Number two, you talked about it, man, winning football. I mean, you look at a couple of these stats and say, all right, you're 123rd in red zone scoring last year. Brutal. Ain't going to win many football games doing that. 95th in turnover margin, not good enough. 108th in time of possession. All of these in the margin stats just aren't going Auburn's way. And look, that's on the coach. You have put together the roster. As you noted, I think the young talent that's developing on this program is certainly there. You got to go out and make it happen in the big moments. That's what you need to see.
And there was that element. I can forgive some of it because, again, he did have to play very young with that team. Like he was pressing guys into duty very, very young.
Yeah, fair.
But that leash, let's say, is kind of wearing a little bit thin.
Because all your guys now are going into year three.
Now it's your team. Like year 2, year 3 guys, like they need to start making it happen. Like you just can't lose to teams that you're far outclassing on a talent level.
And Dill, that's a perfect segue in getting into the schedule where I look at Auburn's schedule and say, I'm going down the list and I'm just saying talent to talent. Like, how does Auburn stack up? Like, I know I highlighted Baylor in purple. Auburn should be going on the road and winning that game Friday night. They have more.
Feel like it'll be like a huge litmus test of like how this season's going to go. Like, because really, they probably should beat Auburn or Baylor, I should say, and it probably shouldn't be like a wildly close game. And I respect what Baylor does, but that's not a team that has a ton of like blue chip guys on that roster. Like, yes, Dave Aranda gets a lot out of them, but if Auburn's going to be what I think Hugh Freeze is getting paid for Auburn to be and what this Auburn program gives him in terms of resources, the Baylor game shouldn't be one that like you're really sweating if you're an Auburn fan.
Especially in year 3. Yeah, especially in year 3. I think that might be the biggest game on the schedule because I look at part of this conversation and it's just like, can we get this football team feeling like they're winners? Because I don't think you've seen that the first 2 years. Like, all right, we're playing really good on the football field and not coming up in big moments. Let's get a little bit of momentum. Like, you go on the road and beat Baylor, take care of Ball State, take care of South Alabama at home. You're all of a sudden 3-0 going into 2 massive road trips where, well, I think Oklahoma's roster is pretty dang strong. I think Texas A&M's roster is pretty dang strong. But I think you could make the argument that Auburn has more talent on their roster. I'm probably getting a lot of crazy looks for my schedule up here. I only have one game highlighted in red, and even that game at home against Georgia, that very well could be highlighted in purple. You kind of give Georgia the nod because Kirby Smart has shown that he's a little bit more of a winner than Hugh Freeze at this point. But Auburn's at this point in their trajectory as a program under Hugh Freeze where you look at these football games and say, all right, in 2023, and then in some cases in 2024, you knew you just weren't quite there against some of the best teams in the country. You go into 2025 and say, you look at this schedule and say, Auburn, if they play winning football, if they play their best football, have the capability of beating just about every single team on this schedule in the 2025 year.
And that will be the thing. Like I even look at games like Arkansas, like that should, and you have it marked in green. That
it needs to be.
Like it looks like it was a green marked game, like an easy win or at least a very comfortable win. Because like that type of game, like Arkansas is having a lot of problems. I feel like with that program, like their turnover is pretty bad. They don't recruit at a particularly high level. Hugh Freeze, like again, operationally off the field, far outclassing what Arkansas is doing. But then when you get on the field with that Arkansas team, that needs to come to fruition.
Looking at this schedule, what do you think's the record that could cost Hugh Freeze his job.
Costing his job, like, straight up at the end of the year, they're just gone with him. It's probably if they go 6-6, I think 6-6 and worse, I think there's a good chance he's not coaching at Auburn anymore.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that too.
7 wins would be really kind of disappointing, to be honest.
Agreed.
And I think he'd be very on the hot seat going into the 2026 season, but I don't think he loses his job. 6-6 and worse. Yeah, I think
because if you even go 7-5, I mean, I have 6 games highlighted in green, like games I expect Auburn to win. That means you just like ain't winning any of your toss-ups, which has been the problem with Hugh Freeze. And like if it doesn't happen in year 3, you're kind of saying, all right, you ever going to start winning games for this football program going forward? To me, I think that's reasonable. 7-5, it's noisy, but you probably hold on to your job because you probably want to give Hugh Freeze, like, all right, give your 2 deuce nights to Hugh Freeze. But I think you go any lower, and I wouldn't even be opposed. And again, it frustrates me because I think Hugh Freeze is doing everything right off the field, and that's where it starts. Like, as much as we want to talk about what's going on the field, normally that correlates with how you're operating as a program off the field. And I think Hugh Freeze and Auburn are doing everything right. Now you just got to go pay it out. I don't want to get into like an official prediction here, Dill, but that win total sitting at 7.5. Where do you stand on Auburn early in the summer in terms of 7.5 over under win total?
I mean, I hate it. That feels kind of on the money. Like, it probably is. I'd be kind of surprised, frankly, if they won 9 or 10 games. Like, eight kind of feels like the target you'd really like to see them win, because that does mean, again, maybe you didn't beat Georgia, maybe you didn't beat Alabama, but you beat a Texas A&M and an Oklahoma. Like, but those type of games, you probably got to win at least. I'd like to think you'd win half of those games circled in purple. That's probably what you should be shooting.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more. I don't know if the term is like optimistic, because I am very optimistic around this Auburn football team, but I'm like a little bit more of we got to see Hugh Freeze put it together. I want to see 8 wins. And if you get to 8 wins, I think you temper the hot seat conversations. But if you go lower than 8, like if we're talking about this team 7-5 at the end of December, especially with like, it kind of depends on how it looks a little bit, I will be talking about Hugh Freeze being on the hot seat in 2026, 100%. So I kind of expect 8 wins. And Dill, if you told me at the end of December, we're talking about a team that went 9-3, I maybe would be a little bit surprised, but I don't think I'd be stunned. Like, it didn't come out of nowhere like Indiana came out of nowhere, because I think they have the roster to do just that in the 2025 year. It's such a fascinating football team. And you kind of just want to see Hugh Freeze pay off, I would say, all the good work that he's done building this program and building this roster, because it is a roster that can do some damage in the 2025 year. We'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.